No, hold on.
Everybody is so hateful. I'll ask Laurie to go skating. He's always kind and jolly and will put me to rights. I know, said Jo to herself, and off she went. Amy heard the clash of skates and looked out with an impatient exclamation. There! She promised I should go next time, for this is the last ice we shall have, but it's no use to ask such a crosspatch to take me. Don't say that. You were very naughty, and it's hard to forgive the loss of her precious little books. But I think she might do it now. I guess she will, if you try her at the right minute, said Meg. Go after them, don't say anything till Jo has got good-natured with Laurie, and then take a quiet minute. Just kiss her or do some kind thing, and I'm sure she'll be friends again with all her heart. I'll try, said Amy, for the advice suited her, and after a flurry to get ready, she ran after the friends, who were just disappearing over the hill. It was not far to the river, but both were ready before Amy reached them. Jo saw her coming and turned her back. Laurie did not see, for he was carefully skating along the shore, sounding the ice, for a warm spell had preceded the cold snap. I'll go to the first bend and see if it's all right before we begin the race, Amy heard him say, as she shot away, looking like a young Russian in a fur-trimmed coat and cap. Jo heard Amy panting after her run, stamping her feet and blowing her fingers as she tried to put her skates on. But Jo never turned and went slowly zigzagging down the river, taking a bitter, unhappy sort of satisfaction in her sister's troubles. She had cherished her anger till it grew strong and took possession of her, as evil thoughts and feelings always do, unless you cast them out at once. As Laurie turned the bend, he shouted back, "Keep near the shore, it isn't safe in the middle." Jo heard, but Amy was just struggling to her feet and did not catch a word. Jo glanced over her shoulder, and a little demon she was harbouring said in her ear, no matter whether she heard or not, let her take care of herself. Laurie had vanished round the bend. Jo was just at the turn, and Amy far behind, striking out towards the smoother ice in the middle of the river. For a minute Jo stood still, with a strange feeling at her heart. Then she resolved to go on, but something held and turned her round just in time to see Amy throw up her hands and go down with a sudden crash of rotten ice. The splash of water and the cry made Jo's heart stand still with fear. She tried to call Laurie, but her voice was gone. She tried to rush forward, but her feet seemed to have no strength in them, and for a second she could only stand motionless, staring with terror-stricken face at the little blue hood above the black water. Something rushed swiftly by her, and Laurie's voice cried out, "Bring a rail! Quick, quick!" How she did it she never knew, but for the next few minutes she worked as if possessed, blindly obeying Laurie, who was quite self-possessed, and lying flat, held Amy by his arm till Jo dragged a rail from the fence, and together they got the child out more frightened than hurt. "Now then, we must walk her home as fast as we can. Pile on our things on her while I get off these confounded skates," cried Laurie, wrapping his coat around Amy and tugging away at the straps, which were never seemed so intricate before. Shivering, dripping and crying, they got Amy home, and after an exciting time of it, she fell asleep rolled in blankets before a hot fire. During the bustle, Jo had scarcely spoken, but flown about looking pale and wild, with her things half off, her dress torn, and her hands cut and bruised by ice and rails and refractory buckles. When Amy was comfortably asleep, the house quiet, and Mrs. March sitting by the bed, she called Jo to her and began to bind up the hurt hands. "Are you sure she's safe?" whispered Jo, looking remorsefully at the golden head, which might have been swept away from sight for ever under the treacherous ice. "Quite safe, dear. She's not hurt, and won't even take a cold, I think. He was so sensible in covering and getting her home quickly," replied her mother cheerfully. "Laurie did it all. I only let her go. Mother, if she should die, it would be my fault." And Jo dropped down beside the bed in a passion of penitent tears, telling all that had happened, bitterly condemning her hardness of heart, and sobbing out of gratitude for being spared the heavy punishment which might have come upon her. "It's my dreadful temper. I try to cure it, I think I have, and then it breaks out worse than ever. Oh, Mother, what shall I do? What shall I do?" cried poor Jo in despair. "Watch and pray, dear. Never get tired of trying, and never think it's impossible to conquer your fault," said Mrs. March, drawing the blousy head to her shoulder and kissing the wet cheek so tenderly that Jo cried harder than ever. "Don't you know, and you can't guess how bad it is? It seems as if I could do anything when I'm in a passion. I get so savage I could hurt anybody and enjoy it. I'm afraid I shall do something dreadful some day and spoil my life and make everybody hate me. Oh, mother, help me. Do, please help me. I will, my child, I will. Don't cry so bitterly, but remember this day and resolve with all your soul that you will never know another like it. Joe, dear, we all have our temptations, some far greater than yours, and it often takes us all of our lives to conquer them. You think your temper is the worst in the world, but mine used to be just like it. Yours, mother? Why, you're never angry. And for a moment Joe forgot remorse in surprise. I've been trying to cure it for 40 years and have only succeeded in controlling it. I am angry nearly every day of my life, Joe, but I have learnt not to show it, and I still hope to learn not to feel it, though it may take me another 40 years to do so. The patience and the humility of the face she loved so well was a better lesson to Joe than the wisest lecture, the sharpest reproof. She felt comforted at once by the sympathy and confidence given her. The knowledge that her mother had a fault like hers and tried to mend it made her own easier to bear and strengthened her resolution to cure it, though 40 years seemed rather a long time to watch and pray to a girl of 15. Mother, are you angry when you fold your lips tight together and go out of the room sometimes when Aunt March scolds or people worry you? Asked Joe, feeling nearer and dearer to her mother than ever before. Yes, I've learnt to check the hasty words that rise to my lips, and when I feel that they mean to break out against my will, I just go away a minute and give myself a little shake for being so weak and wicked, answered Mrs. March with a sigh and a smile, and she smoothed and fastened up Joe's dishevelled hair. How did you learn to keep still? That is what troubles me, for the sharp words fly out before I know what I'm about, and the more I say, the worse I get, till it's a pleasure to hurt people's feelings and say dreadful things. Tell me, how do you do it, Marmee dear? Oh, my good mother used to help me. As you do us, interpreted Joe with a grateful kiss, but I lost her when I was a little older than you are, and for years had to struggle on alone, for I was too proud to confess my weakness to anyone else. I had a hard time, Joe, and shed many good bitter tears over my failures, for in spite of my efforts I never seemed to get on. Then your father came, and I was so happy that I found it easy to be good. But by and by, when I had 4 little daughters round me and we were poor, then the old trouble began again, for I am not patient by nature, and it tried me very much to see my children wanting anything. Poor mother, what helped you then? Your father, Joe, he never loses patience, never doubts or complains, but always hopes and works and waits so cheerfully that one is ashamed to do otherwise before him. He helped and comforted me and showed me that I must try to practice all the virtues I would have my little girls possess, for I was their example. It was easier to try for your sakes than for my own. A startled or surprised look from one of you, when I spoke sharply, rebuked me more than any words could have done, and the love, respect and confidence of my children was the sweetest reward I could receive for my efforts to be the woman I would have them copy. Oh, mother, if I'm ever half as good as you, I shall be satisfied, cried Joe, much touched. I hope you will be a great deal better, dear, but you must keep watch over your bosom enemy, as father calls it, or it may sadden, if not spoil your life. You have had a warning, remember it, and try with heart and soul to master this quick temper before it brings you greater sorrow and regret than you have ever known today. I will try, mother, I truly will, but you must help me, remind me, and keep me from flying out. I used to see father sometimes put his finger on his lips and look at you with very kind but sober face, and you always folded your lips tight or went away. Was he reminding you then? Asked Joe softly. Yes, I asked him to help me so, and he never forgot it, but saved me from many a sharp word by that little gesture and kind look. Joe saw that her mother's eyes filled and her lips trembled as she spoke, and fearing that she had said too much, she whispered anxiously, Was it wrong to watch you and to speak of it? I didn't mean to be rude, but it's so comfortable to say all I think to you and feel so safe and happy here. My Joe, you may say anything to your mother, for it's my greatest happiness and pride to feel that my girls confide in me and know how much I love them. I thought I'd grieved you. No, dear, but speaking of father reminded me how much I miss him, how much I owe him, and how faithfully I should watch and work to keep his little daughters safe and good for him. But yet you told him to go, mother, and didn't cry when he went, and never complain now, or seem as if you needed any help, said Joe, wondering. I gave my best to the country I love and kept my tears till he was gone. Why should I complain when we both have merely done our duty and will surely be the happier for it in the end? If I don't seem to need help, it's because I have a better friend even than your father to comfort and sustain me. My child, the troubles and temptations of your life are beginning, and may be many, but you can overcome and outlive them all if you learn to feel the strength and tenderness of your heavenly Father as you do that of your earthly one. The more you love and trust him, the nearer you will feel to him, and the less you will depend on human power and wisdom. His love and care never tire or change, and can never be taken from you. But many become the source of lifelong peace and happiness and strength. Believe this heartily and go to God with all your little cares and hopes and sins and sorrows, and freely and confidently as you come to your mother. Jo's only answer was to hold her mother close, and in the silence which followed, the sincerest prayer she had ever prayed left her heart without words. For in that sad yet happy hour she had learnt not only the bitterness of remorse and despair, but the sweetness of self-denial and self-control, and led by her mother's hand, she had drawn nearer to the friend who welcomed every child with love stronger than that of any father, tenderer than that of any mother. Amy stirred and sighed in her sleep, and as if eager to bring at once to mend her fault, Jo looked up with an expression on her face which it had never worn before. I'll let the sun go down on my anger. I wouldn't forgive her, and today, if I hadn't been for Laurie, it might have been too late. How could I be so wicked, said Jo, half aloud, as she leaned over her sister, softly stroking the wet hair scattered on the pillow. As if she heard Amy, opened her eyes, held out her arms with a smile that went straight to Jo's heart. Neither said a word, but they hugged one another close, and in spite of the blanket and everything was forgiven and forgotten in one hearty kiss.